Well, like any other person.
So, I mean, what do you make of Labour's stance against the FG's position on this issue of Labour said the protest was largely about hunger. The federal government says NLC led by Joe Ajero is not sincere. I mean, it keeps shifting the goalposts at every time. What's your view?
Well, first of all, it's necessary that we understand that Labour represent the interests, the aspirations, and the rights of Nigerian workers. So they have that mandate to speak in the defense of the interests of Nigerian workers, advance their dreams and expectations. And the government has a responsibility as a constituted authority to implement programs and reforms. Now, the area of contention here is the economic reform policy that has now touched on the lives of people and has created problems for so many people. Well, naturally, and in history, whenever you have an economic reforms, there is bound to be consequences of that reforms. It has happened when Margaret Thatcher took over office in 1979-80. She implemented reforms in Britain that led to a number of issues. And then Deng Xiaoping in China, when he took over, the same thing with Mahathir Mohamad in Malaysia, Hanoi in Indonesia, and several others in Brazil and Argentina. But what those in the position of power need to understand is that when you are implementing economic reforms, you must anticipate the crisis and the issues that will arise out of it, and then you make provisions to address it. But the government in power today has inherited some problems which it was not responsible, and that there are also mistakes which it has made. The problem it has inherited is that what is going on in Nigeria today, if the Buhari administration in the last 8 years has implemented those reforms, then we could have been reaping the benefit of it now. For 8 years, he couldn't remove subsidy. For 8 years, he couldn't stabilize the naira. And the way we were going about it is that pumping billions, then trillions, then borrowing to subsidize petroleum products. And then secondly, money is being pumped in to also subsidize the naira. If all these things was done, it couldn't have been. But it's the same party. Buhari handed over to Tinubu.
So there's no excuse.
Yeah, Buhari handed over to Tinubu, and they have said so many nice things about him. They have praised him, they have eulogized him, and said so many good things. Recently, when a book was launched, praises upon praises on Buhari's administration. And then the same people who praised him will now come and say that this is what he has done wrongly, and he's what we must be very practical and realistic with ourselves. The problems we find ourselves today originated, was engineered, fabricated, and sustained by the Buhari administration. The Buhari administration institutionally, fundamentally destroyed the Nigerian economy. And then when Tinubu took over power, and he knows that there is not going to be subsidy, and to be realistic, he was very frank during his campaign. He said, I am going to remove subsidy, and whatever protest that will come out of it, I will not back down. This is all on record. And then people went ahead and voted for him. So he has not deceived Nigerians. Now he is in power. So we are paying the price for the mistakes of the past, for the failure of the past, and for what we refused to do in the past. So this is reality. Labour has the right to protest, but Nigeria should not fear Labour protest. The protest that should be feared is the one that will be organized by unorganizable society. Labour protest comes with notice and comes with specifications and comes with control. We are going to have a protest, and it's going to last for 2 days, and we are going to lead it, and we're going to call for its suspension.
Say that again. Sorry. Yeah. This is not labor-oriented at all.
I know. The protest that took place was a labor protest.
Okay.
Led by Nigerian workers. But the one should be feared is the one that will be organized by an unorganized civil society where the people who are hungry will now come out on the street.
Is there such a plan?
It is not going to be a 2 days affair, and it's not going to be led by anybody. It's going to be people in the street. So for now, this has happened. Lessons should be taken. We must address the problems of poverty, of inflation, of hunger in the country. At this state, today, people can't pay their rent. People can't pay the tuition fees of their children. People can't afford to eat. But these are consequences of the reforms. If this was done 5, 6, 7 years ago, we couldn't have been. But we have reached, Tinubu is in a dilemma. He has 2 options. The first one is to implement reform, lose popularity, and then put Nigeria on the right trajectory for the future. The second one is to do what other governments do. Pump in money to subsidize petroleum products, pump in money to show up the Naira, and then we'll reach a point which we can't go further. So it is all left for him today. We have had a trickle of this in 1989 when SAP, Structural Adjustment Program of Babangida, was introduced. And people woke up in a day and see IMF policies implemented sector by sector. And there was protest, if you have not forgotten.
Yes, I've not.
So this is where we are today. Things we refused to do in the past, we are now facing the reality of it.
If the president has to do something, because this has to be, there has to be some low-hanging fruit that will get the lives of people going again, those who are unable to meet their family needs because of these inabilities and inabilities due to the socioeconomic problems of the country. If there's something that needs to be done urgently, what do you think should be?
You see, our problems are man-made and homemade. Our problems are ourselves. This is a country that has almost a landmass of about over 900,000 square kilometers. We have 200 rivers in Nigeria. From north to south, east to west, we have well-nourished arable lands that are good for agriculture. What can grow in Brazil can grow in Nigeria. What can grow in Thailand can grow in Nigeria. What can grow in Vietnam can grow in Nigeria. But we kept aside all this and we are expecting manna. Manna is we import everything we want. The question is, God has given Nigeria everything that it needs. Saudi Arabia has no river, but they are not hungry. And they take care of everything. Look at what's happening with Israel. I think they were the last people who had manna. They were not expecting manna, and they are not anticipating any manna. They made their desert green. Everything you can think of that God needs to give to a nation, he has given to Nigeria. But we have not.
It's a typical example,
yes,
too.
But we have not been able to have visionary, courageous, and bold leaders that will connect our resources, our wealth, our people with our future. So that has been the problem. Leaders have failed, successive leaders have failed this country, and they refuse to implement bold reforms out of fear of consequences. The issue is that if all this reform had a time span to which we say we're going to suffer for 1 year, and then from there we will see the benefit of reform, that will be fine. But the point is that you can't continue to make sacrifices and it becomes one side. Because from what's happening here, it appears it's the poor that are the ones who are sacrificing. Because people in the position of authority doesn't seem to be paying any price. Everyone is living the normal, luxurious life. And if we go on this, in nations that you see sacrifices, in Iran has been under sanction for 45 years. All their refineries are working. Cuba has been under sanctions since 1969 or 59. But all their facilities are functioning. When a leader says, make sacrifice, let it sacrifice be seen in the lives of ministers, in the lives of governors, in the lives of senators, in the lives of people in position of power. But when sacrifice is only demanded of those on the lower strata of the society, this is the kind of problems you're going to have.
And it comes to, I was reading Peter Obi's tweets about responding to the Oronsai report, because this is part of the sacrifices that running government is too bogus, is too expensive for the meager resources that is coming into the national coffers. So you hear Peter Obi say that there must be a drastic cutting in the cost of governance, eliminating the overlapping of responsibilities to ensure that responsibilities are properly domiciled. So you look at we have a list of all of the MVAs, some that have been subsumed, some that have been scrapped, some that have been merged and transferred into other ministries. And Mr. Femi Falana, for example, has said this, and I'd like you to respond to it, comrade. He says, contrary to the belief in official cycles, the 12-year-old Steve Onrosai report will not substantially reduce the enormous cost of governance in the country, as it does not reflect the current situation in the public service. No doubt the implementation of some of the recommendations of the panel will take appreciable time, as the measure of certain bodies require constitutional amendments or repeal of a number of statutes. However, in implementing the Onrosai report, the federal government should ensure that the crisis of insecurity is not compounded through the retrenchment of hundreds of thousands of workers. Instead of downsizing the public service, the federal government should ensure that the two houses of the National Assembly are merged, while the number of ministers, special advisors, senior special assistants, and special assistants is significantly reduced. Do you agree with Mr. Falana?
Falana is 100% right. But let me tell you this from this perspective. Most of these commissions were created by the National Assembly. When you are elected into office as a senator or as a member of the House of Reps, one of the factors that will be used to gauge your performance or your stewardship in office is the number of bills you are able to sponsor, and also the number of federal agencies you are able to also, that comes out from your bills. And as such, you see every year, legislators, the lawmakers come out with all sorts of ideas on commissions, of agencies, on boards, on bureau, on so many things. But we don't take cognizance of the fact that we are a poor country, a nation of 224 million people with such little resources. So we don't take it. Some of the agencies that we create in this country are so irrelevant and useless. And it is time actually to implement Orensai report. But Orensai report could have been updated. The president could have invited Orensai and his committee, or embellish more, create more committee, invite more people into the committee, appoint them, and then invite Orensai and say, update your report based on the fact that new commissions, agencies have been created after this report.
Senator, look at
and then from there you look at
the irony. Since Jonathan's period, when the report was submitted, look at what happened. The recommendation says prune down the number of 263 agencies at the time was a problem to 151. But from that time till now, the number of ministries, departments, and agencies have increased to 1,316.
Now,
So every other year, we were creating an average of 300 ministries.
If you live in Abuja today, there is hardly any street you will move without seeing an agency you never know the name of it in your lifetime. It's either one commission on this, or agency on this, or this or that. Now, this is what we do. Not only in Abuja, but we set up zonal offices in all the 6 geopolitical zones, and then we set up state offices, all expanding bureaucracy that we have to fund. Now, look at the number of these agencies that came after Orensai. So, if you look at what is being done now, is that it is simply let us implement this, but without thinking that this has gone out of date. So I believe that the only way to do justice to this is to invite Orensai. He has done a beautiful job to update his report. Then from there to be implemented. And government need to understand this. Creating all this multitude of agencies will not solve problems. I heard arguments that are being given is that creation of these agencies will make the bureaucracies work. But go around and see. Almost 55% of most of these agencies are living in rented apartments. And you go there, you see some staff duplication of responsibility and duty. For example, what is the difference between National Human Rights Commission and Public Complaints Commission? You look at it. They're all about human rights. They're all about people submitting petition and then an agency of government pursuing their issues. So if we are going to do a realistic reform, then it has to be fundamental. And again, the ruling party had made promises of a restructuring, which is a reset or reconfiguration of Nigeria. But it has not happened under Buhari administration. And it is expected that President Bola Tinubu, coming from that background, we should have seen steps being taken to restructure this country. Restructuring this country will not only cut the cost of governance, but will make the country more efficient.
And this is
where you have a nation that has a House of Representatives and the Senate. Senegal was able to abolish the Senate. And what you have here, the functions of the Senate and House of Reps are the same. The difference is that we in the Senate, we confirm the appointments of Mr. President, and they don't do it in House of Reps. But other than that, it's the same. Now you have 360 people and 109 people, all serviced by the state in tens of billions of naira. So if we are going to cut the cost of governance, it's not simply not be about merging ministries or harmonizing bureaucracies.
Let's wrap this up. And perhaps one thing that the president can go to bed with as a final word from you tonight. If you can do that for me in 30 seconds. What would you say to President Bola Tinubu tonight if he wants to leave a lasting legacy? We all want him to succeed because it's in the interest of our nation. If you are to tell him something about this nation and what he needs to do urgently in 30 seconds, what would that be? From
his agenda, there are three ones which are picked, which is security, economy, and agriculture. On security, I've actually seen a serious improvement. Yesterday, I moved from Kaduna to Abuja when I couldn't get a train. Train was suspended because of labor strike. But I've seen serious security presence, and that is a very good job and a positive step taken. On the economy, whatever reforms we are going to take, you have to take cognizance that this is a fragile country, a country that some say is sitting on a cake of gunpowder. And at every opportunity, people capitalize on it, and it's going to create a lot of problems. So Sudan started with protests. Look at what they have done to now.
Yeah.
So economic reforms can only function when people are alive. So the need to bring out measures that will address the problems of poverty is needed now.
Senator Shehu Sani, such a pleasure having you and having you talk to us on some of these issues. Thank you so much indeed. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senator Shehu Sani, former federal lawmaker and a human rights activist. That's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimalo.